a very warm welcome today to our webinar. Welcome to the University of London's Centre for Online and Distance Education. Our webinar today is focusing on learning in challenging contexts through war and displacement. Colleagues from across the globe have registered for today's session, and I'm very pleased to welcome all. I can see that some people are still joining, and look forward to further colleagues joining as we move forward. So my name's Linda Amran Cooper, and I'm Director of the Centre for Online and Distance Education at the University. University of London's been involved in distance education for 160 years, which is quite a long time. And our mission from the start has been about providing access to high quality education. With over 40,000 students in 190 countries at the moment, we are delivering on that. University of London pioneers unique forms of education and research that transform lives and society. But the conditions in which our students learn really varies very greatly. By providing access to education for those in complex situations, for example, prisoners, including Nelson Mandela on Robben Island, who studied laws with us, the University of London has developed systems and practices that help to support those who try to gain an education in complex, challenging living circumstances. It's vitally important, it seems to me, that the university and the HE sector continues to consider the needs of displaced students and those living in complex, challenging, including war circumstances, so that we can ensure the opportunities we provide, particularly through online and distance education, support and empower. That's why I'm really delighted that today we have a team who are going to explore how innovations in online and distance education can contribute to supporting learning during conflicts. Situations where educators and students may face challenges, including forced displacement, will be part of our discussion. We're going to focus on Myanmar and learn from the other conflicts in other affected areas. Currently, the University of London has just under 40 students domiciled in Myanmar, and we've provided a number of full scholarships to displaced Myanmar students who are supported by UNHCR in Malaysia. But we know that this is an absolute tiny drop in a huge ocean. And so I'm therefore delighted that we're able to bring together a panel of speakers and experts and practitioners involved in the Access Myanmar project from UNHCR and from the Council for At-Risk Academics, CARA, to explore this area and to share some of their thoughts. I'm very pleased to hand over to one of my long-standing colleagues, John Gregson, who's here with us, Code Fellow and significant contributor to the world of online education, particularly for complex environments. John, I'll hand over to you if I may.
Thank you so much, Linda. You're able to hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Well, warm welcome to everybody, and thank you very much also to fellow speakers who are joining me today, particularly to Teacher Han from Spring Normal University, and Frankie and hopefully Matt from CARA will be with us soon, and Frankie from UNHCR. As Linda said, we'll start by focusing a bit on Myanmar. I think I'd describe myself as more of a practitioner than researcher or academic, but I've been working in online and distance education now for about 30 years and spent some years living in Nepal, but since 2013 have had a lot of what I've been doing focused on higher education in Myanmar. Before the coup, that was working on a project called Tide, which was focusing on building capacity for distance education and higher education institutions. And since the coup, I've been working on a project called Access Myanmar, which I'll also briefly talk about. But the overall topic for the webinar is about how online and distance education can be used to address some of the challenges that learners face during war and conflict. I'm hoping I can get to my next slide okay. Let's check now. Yeah, so those are the speakers today. And just to start with a little background on the Myanmar context, I imagine most people will be familiar, but generally speaking, it's surrounded by a number of different countries, China and India and Laos and Thailand in particular, and is made up of a large number of different ethnic groups and multiple languages. The map just gives you an impression of some of the different parts of the country that are occupied by major ethnic groups. And its recent history, I think, has been pretty turbulent up till 2013. There was military rule and then a transition to democracy led by the National League for Democracy and Aung San Suu Kyi. And that period lasted for about 6 years, but was also impacted by the Rohingya crisis that got an international profile from 2017 in particular, though its origins go back much longer than that. And then, of course, we had the coup in February 2021. And since then, there's been an intensification of conflicts between different ethnic armed organizations. And many people have been displaced both internally and externally. Last year, there was conscription introduced for young people, both male and female, and that led to even more people trying to get out of the country, and in particular moving to countries neighboring Myanmar, such as Thailand. And then most recently, it's been back in the news again with the earthquake, the very major earthquake centered between Mandalay and Sagaing. So a lot has sort of been affecting the country, and all of this in different ways has been affecting education. Moving on to the context for education, it's fascinating in many ways as well to see that there's been a huge focus on distance education. This goes back, I think, to the military regimes in the past, which tried to locate students away from city centres. So as you'll see from that chart, in 2021, when we had access to the last data, over 60% of students in Myanmar were registered with distance education universities. And these were typically arts and science universities. And two major universities, Yangon University of Distance Education and Mandalay University of Distance Education, distributed printed materials and videos and CDs throughout the country, and the 48 arts and science universities then delivered them, and their academics provided the examination support and so on. But it was regarded as very low quality. So a lot of the efforts prior to the coup were on improving the quality of teaching and learning, and improving curriculum, and also beginning to explore how learning technologies could play a role. Then the COVID pandemic came along, and that actually led to kind of significant move in terms of uptake of online and distance education approaches, as in common with many other parts of the world. So there are hundreds of thousands of students already studying by distance. There were many who'd matriculated from school who couldn't even access higher education before the coup. That was becoming a major problem, with hundreds of thousands of people not being able to access higher education at all. And there was a reform process underway from 2018 to revise the curriculum and change from a system that took students to university after grade 10 to being one which modified the whole curriculum and schooling so that people went to university after grade 12. I'm sure, just to say, that we've probably got experts, and I know I've got colleagues from Myanmar on this webinar at the moment who know a lot more about this from personal experience than I do. So when we get to the end of this presentation and the end of the presentations overall, it'd be great to get their insights as well, and they can add to anything that I've got wrong. But this is the context before the coup, and since the coup, what's happened is we've seen a real growth in what, in our project, we've been referring to as an alternative education sector. We did a mapping of organisations working outside of the military-controlled education system last year. And what we've seen is that thousands of teachers joined a civil disobedience movement, and hundreds of thousands of youth were displaced and boycotted the military-run education institutions. And then there was an emergence of a federal agenda for future democracy, and ethnic education organisations have begun to play an even greater role. So rather than sort of looking at a national solution, it's become more of a case of different ethnic education organisations, along with a national unity government in exile, have developed their own agendas for future education. But these alternative non-military run education related organisations are estimated as being over 40,000 in terms of actors, and they range from private sector institutions to community-based colleges, new online universities, and we'll hear from Han about the university that she's working at Spring Normal University after I've finished. There are many migrant learning centres on the Thai-Myanmar border in particular. There are NGO activities in education, and lots of CDM teachers running their own teaching activities on online learning platforms, and often using Zoom and Facebook and Telegram to support students in the best ways that they can. The ways students and teachers are engaging is largely online and using smartphones. One of the things about Myanmar in particular over the last several years has been that people tend to access internet through smartphones. And since 2015, that's really taken off. Before 2015, there was very little use of mobile technology in Myanmar. So it's all happened very fast. And a lot of people see the internet in Myanmar as being Facebook. But these approaches of online learning and smartphone and blended learning have been key to the way that these alternative education actors have been delivering delivering education. And there's been quite a lot of projects that have sort of over the last few years in particular been seeking to develop the skills of the CDM teachers and educators more generally. But as we know from earlier this year, there's been major loss in international funding. So those activities have been affected very significantly. The project that I've been involved in, I just want to touch on briefly, has been called the Access Myanmar project, which developed its own platform initially because of reasons to do with security and wanting to have a platform where people could be anonymous and that was available 24/7 and sort of in theory unhackable, but I'm not sure if that's the case. And we produced a range of short online courses. The main topic areas are listed on the right and were largely focused on the needs of educators and trying to help them in the type of education that they were delivering online and the kind of support that they needed to give to students in some key topic areas. Initially, it was just self-study, and we were kind of discouraged really from engaging as a project with some of the different education institutions emerging locally. But over the last year, we were encouraged more to build those partnerships. So we've been working closely with SNU and with other education providers in Thailand and some in Myanmar to provide a mix of safe online self-study and related live online training where the partner selects the participants and we provide data and support costs to those participants to help them with the challenges of access. And that's been very successful in terms of completion rates. I should say that also the education sector in Myanmar, a lot of the academics, particularly in science and arts universities, are female. So the gender challenges are actually to get more male involvement. but that's just an aside that's quite interesting to do with Myanmar context. Just to wrap up my section of the presentation, I want to just highlight some of the challenges. The map on the right kind of highlights that the military only really control about a third of the country now, and there's areas where resistance controlled by different ethnic organizations is very significant. So you can imagine a lot of the public universities are now in those locations which are resistance controlled. And the nature of the conflict means that it's very fluid, and things change very much from day to day in terms of where it's safe to deliver education, where people can access internet. Typically in the resistance controlled areas, they've accessed it through Starlink, but there's attempts to close some of those Starlink centers down. The challenges in summary are the learning loss and gaps among Myanmar youth. A lot of students lack the documentation both for travel and to represent the level of education that they've achieved. They face significant challenges in getting employment, though I think there's an emphasis on trying to build digital skills so that people can maybe do aspects of sort of working online. Safety and security on and offline are both major concerns. And this has also led to issues of trust. People don't know when they're online, whether they're in groups with people that they can trust or not. So they often keep their cameras off and use code names instead of real names. And we have to, when we're thinking about delivery of solutions for online education, be very aware of these issues. As I mentioned, there's different locations controlled by military and ethnic armed organizations. So you need to kind of work with multiple partners, though we don't work with the military at all. Many have been displaced also into Thailand, estimated over 4 million people in recent years, some longer term migrants, but many in the last year or two. And that's been particularly accelerated due to the conscription. Challenges of digital literacy for students and staff, designing for mobile learning and the costs of internet connection and trying to make it possible for people to access online learning. It's been a challenge. And I think, and Teacher Han might say more about this, that there's also challenges to get the courses that are developed recognized, both certified in a way that's sort of internationally recognized and ideally become credit bearing. Teachers' livelihoods, a lot of the CDM teachers have received very little income or support internationally, and they're having to do multiple jobs just to survive, as well as to try and teach, and need to develop more skills, as we've all been trying to seek to support this in online and distance education. And since the earthquake, there's also been a lot of discussion about how this digital education model could be more resilient to these sort of major things like pandemics and conflict. In terms of just possible ways to help, I think if universities in the UK or elsewhere are able to share courses that are open access or open license, so they can be translated and shared in local languages for Myanmar students, that would be great. Support for teacher training, and support for curriculum development, and assisting in quality standards, scholarships. Prospect Burma, a UK-based charity that I'm involved with, who are very great in providing scholarship support, both by distance and face-to-face. A major US scholarship program was closed recently due to the funding from USAID being stopped. There's also a growing need for mentors just to help guide students and teachers through these very difficult situations they face. And I know there's also growing need for research skill development. I just literally had this drawn to my attention a couple of days ago, the publication that you might want to access, which I think can be downloaded. I've also listed there, which is very relevant to today's topic. I'm just going to stop there and maybe just check if there's any one or two quick questions for clarification in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have questions at the end. But Linda, is there anything in the chat that I could usefully pick up on
No, nothing in the chat at the moment. I would encourage people to put things in the chat if they'd like to. But I think it was such a useful context setting, John, really, really helpful, and also illustrating the complexity and the huge challenges involved. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Well, in which case, Teacher Han, if you're ready, I will click on the button and move through the slides as you're ready, but perhaps you could start.
John, there is one question in the chat box. One question in the chat box for you.
Can anyone see that? So I haven't got the chat box up because I'm sharing my...
I'm so sorry, I missed that. The question is, what language are the resources in accessmyanmar.com, and are they open to the public?
They are open to the public, so it's free to register and free to access, and they're in English and Myanmar languages. So every course that we're developing currently, we're trying to translate into Myanmar language. We'd like to translate them into some additional ethnic languages as well in time if we had the right resources, but we haven't been able to do that so far. But yeah, they're both languages at the moment.
Thanks, John.
So if Teacher Han, I can maybe hand over by introducing briefly. We met about a year ago, and I've been so impressed by the work that Spring Normal University have been doing with educators, and we've been sort of working closely with teachers that are doing training on their platforms. But if I can hand over to you to introduce yourself and just tell me when you want the next slides.
Thank you, John. It's my honor. So please move to the next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, I would like to explain about a brief context related to higher education and teacher education. As John mentioned before, you already know about the context in Myanmar, but for the higher education, I like to compare about the higher education institution setting before the coup 2020 and during the revolution. Before the coup, we found that there are 3 autonomous universities like Yangon University, Malay University, and also including my university, Yangon University of Education. We are a kind of autonomous university, and some other higher education institutions that is over 200 that John mentioned before, and very few higher education institutions in the ethnic control area, and we call it the highland area, like My Giant Institute, Karen, teacher education, something like that. But during the coup, over 20,000 staff joined the civil disobedience movement, but 20% of them participate in the interim education due to the security reasons, due to the lack of resources, something like that. And as the escalation of the Spring Revolution increased, we know that we have to resume our education anyway. That's why Spring University established. They can be in a different ways, like there are some standalone university like University of Medicine 1, Medicine 2, something like that, and some Alliance University and some comprehensive university. For example, you know that Myanmar Nui University, it is a kind of one comprehensive university, and at that there are over 60 universities, interim councils aligned, and this is a large arts and science university in Myanmar so far. And also some online university like my university. For example, my university is a Spring Normal University. My mother university is a Yangon University of Education. Yangon University of Education cannot stand alone. That's why we collaborate with other teacher education universities like Sakai University of Education and also University for the Development of National Races. With 3 University of Education combined together form the Spring Normal University, because we cannot stand alone due to the security reason and due to the security of resources. In addition to that, there are some universities on the ground. John, I haven't finished the previous slide yet.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. So some university on the ground, like in Sakai and in Magwe, there are some on-ground universities. They are also doing teaching learning on the ground in the liberated area and in the security safe place. And they are kind of mobile learning centers. Students are scattered, and they are they are collected in one places, and they do the teaching learning situation. After that, they are scattered around the village, around the village in the university or the universities. And they provide short courses, diploma and bachelor degree programs, and also master degree programs, and some university provide PhD program as well. But with this is the concept I like to show that although we face difficulties and difficult situations, teachers are trying to resume their education, trying to provide the right for the education, something like that. That's why, in addition to that, they make another move, like they are taking fresher, so first year students who finish their matriculation exam, and they join the CDN, and they didn't go to the SAC University and Honda University, but they are waiting for the NUG University to open. That's why we open the first year. We open the first year for the students who finish their matriculation exam. So this is the third time now. And in addition to that, universities and college, in collaboration with NUG and ERO, universities and colleges and institutions are opened, but I found that they are diverse, and that they are diverse, and there is no integration. So they are trying to integrate. A kind of credit transfer system, recognize each themselves, something like that. But for teacher education, you have to know that in Myanmar, there are two main teacher education institutions. One is universities of education, and the other is education degree colleges. We have 3 universities of education and 25 education degree colleges across Myanmar before the coup. And in the interim period, as we cannot stand alone due to the security reason and security of resources, 3 universities of education became trained normal university, and also 25 education degree colleges became university of teaching. So these 2 universities, university for teacher education, they are opening, or they are resuming their programs online, on-site, and hybrid, something like that. In addition to that, there are some on-ground teacher education institutions, like in JJ Normal Academy in Sakai. In Karenni, there is Karenni Education Degree Colleges, and also in Ta'an, in Northern Shan State, we have a Ta'an Education Agency, and also in the Chin State, we have a MEFA EdTech. That is for the teacher education. This list of teacher education institutions have a kind of bond or coordination, and they accept and recognize each other and each other's students, and they transfer their students from one university to another. So this is a kind of bonding that never happened before the coup. So please move to the next slide. Next slide, John. Yeah, for the Spring Normal University, that is I mentioned before, Yangon University of Education, Sakai University of Education, and Juliana. For Yangon, it is responsible for the lower parts of Myanmar. For the Sakai, it is responsible for the teacher education in the higher part, upper part of Myanmar. And University for the development of national resources for the teachers at the borderline area. So these 3 universities together form the Spring Normal University. Got it. Next slide, please. And we provide our programs. In order to do so, we have to make a lot of shifts, a lot of changes. It means like we have to found our systems is collapsed, so we have to build starting from the scratch. So we have to found our university governance first. It's like we found University Interim Council and the departments, and also Senate. And in 2023, student unions was established, and we regulate the meetings, and we regulate the meeting in order to make the coordinations and decision making in our universities. And we also make the structural changes. Before the coup, we are mainly on-ground university, on-campus university. We are in the middle of transforming our university into digital education, but because of due to the coup. But the coup happened. Just 1 year before, 1 year after the COVID. That's why we are not really prepared for the digital education. But in the revolution, we have no choice. We have to do the online teaching, and learning due to the security reasons. So we use our pseudonyms, we change our voice. Like I know we record the video and we edit our voice and edit our voice and also cover our faces, something like that. So we make a lot of changes. So the first thing is we have to form the university campus. It is called website. So we create our website and we put our students into the classroom. It is called Moodle Learning Management System. And we, as a teacher training institutions, we know that all solely online learning is not fully engaged and not interested by the student. That's why we risk our life, like we teach face-to-face classroom. To take the Zoom classes, we have to take a lot of risks because students can recognize our voices, but we don't think about our risks, but our students' engagement. That's why we use not only Moodle LMS, but also Zoom. In addition to that, we also do the YouTube because some students, they have the internet instability. That's why we record the video and we put it in the YouTube in order to for the students to learn themselves. And we use a Telegram channel and Facebook to communicate with our students. In addition to that, we have to do the structural development, we have to train our students and our teacher to align with the digital settings. So we train our teacher with in 2024 and 2025 with the help of John, Access Myanmar. We provide some kinds of digital literacy training and digital media producing training and also mentorship training. Now we are going the AI training for our university teacher. In such a way, we believe that our teacher can do more engagement for our students. So we train our staff to to more accommodate with the online learning systems, and also due to the demands of the ground, we expand and we extend our program. In the next slide, we can see that. John, please, next slide. So in the next slide, which you can see that we expand our program. Before the coup, we have one bachelor degree program, bachelor education for upper secondary. But we in 2023, Myanmar have published federal democracy education policy. In that federal democracy education policy, all the teachers from different levels are the same. So we have to provide degree programs and teacher training programs for all levels of teacher. But for the coup, the primary teachers are at the lowest, and they are promoted to the lower secondary, promoted to the upper secondary. In such a way, teacher resources are discriminated within themselves. Now, according to the federal democracy education policy, all the teachers from different levels are the same. So we have to provide the programs for the teacher. So we expand our programs like upper secondary, lower secondary, primary, and early childhood. In addition to that, for the in-service, it means there are lots of CDN teachers who involved in the interim education period. So we provide them the postgraduate diploma teacher education program, and also we learned that 75% of the teacher in the interim periods are volunteer. That's why we have to provide the teacher training. That's why we create the program like backpack program. So there is a kind of refresher course for the volunteer teacher to introduce about teacher education. Next slide, please. So there are kinds of we endeavor different programs, different activities. Now you can see that within these 4 years, we can produce 3 or 4 graduates. In that, we found that 4 students from 50 out of 54, 4 students now attending master degree in international universities. So which means that SNU degree programs are recognized by the international university. There is a generosity of the international universities. So currently, studying from 3 or 4, now we have students over 3,000. In the future, in the near future, 2025 and 26, we expected to accept 6,000 students. And we will expand our programs like PGDD in lower and primary and lower secondary, and also PGDD BED correspondent courses. And also we are trying to provide MED program for the MED students. So this is a list of the program. So BED upper secondary, BED, the postgraduate diploma in teacher education, PGDD, diploma in educational leadership, DIP EDU lit, and also diploma in English language teaching. The DIP ELT program is in demand. Teachers want to know and want to learn how to teach English as a second language that they don't know how to do. That's why they request us to open that DIP ELT program in SNU. So this is our plan for the 2025-26. So next slide, please. Next slide. So the current challenges, we found that there are 5 main challenges. The main thing is the dropout rate. Although we expand and extend our programs, we accept most teachers. We accept most students who are interested to join SNU, but due to the security risks, airstrike, bombing, and also SAC is attacking their villages. That's why students are in the IDP camp. That's why due to the security risk, internet block, and stable electricity, and due to the conscription law, students drop out very gradually. So dropout rate is very high now, 50 to 70. We found that. For example, in the new intake bachelor education program, we enroll 400 students. We accept, but 250 students actually attend the class, and 106 students, only 106 students passed their first year, and they are now in the second year. So we found the reason behind is that security risks, and also they are poor to buy or renew their handset or laptop to study online. That's why we also provide data support we have to provide data support to our students to join our classes. In addition to that, we also, as students are very new to online, so they only have a handset, and in one family they just have one handset and they have to share it. So they are very new for online education, and we have no choice due to the security risk. That's why they have to attend the online classes, and at that time they don't know how to join Zoom, how to change their name, how to submit their assignment on the Moodle, something like that. So in such a way, we have to provide digital literacy training to our students. In addition to that, then there is a need for digital device. That is very, very normal. You can see that after 4 years of conflict, we don't have the stable income, and also our devices are old and broken, and due to the insufficient electricity supply. That's why there is a need for the digital device to both students and teachers. For the teacher side, although we train our teachers to do more engaged classroom, we also need skills to make our class more inclusive and more engaged for our students. Sometimes students cannot attend the Zoom class. At that time, they have to learn through the YouTube and through the recording. At that time, students are not interested. We found that, and sometimes we don't know how to make interactive teaching, and we don't know how to use interactive online tools to make our students more engaged in our learning. And we found that most of our students, 80% of our students are on the ground, and they want to do the activities. And some students, they are also volunteering on the online schools. They told us that their knowledge and skills for teacher education are improved due to they join our classes, but they would like to know more about digital literacy and how to make inclusive and engaged online classroom. And the last one is call for psychosocial support. There is a normal case because due to the we face a lot of trauma and conflicts. That's why we need a kind of counseling and mentoring. Sometimes in one story, we found that the students, both of the parents of the student has been killed by the SAC, and he cannot attend. At that time, we connect the students like how we can support him to continue his study. But he said like he don't need any support. He just need the kind of psychosocial support, something like that. And after we found that after 1 or 2 months, we couldn't contact him again. So we lost him. So kind of drop out. That's why in SNU we developed the program like counseling program and also online clinic. But we found that it is not so effective to our students. I think we need a kind of psychosocial support for the landscape. Although this is the result of challenge in SNU, but I believe it can cover to the rest of the students in higher education sector who are doing their higher education online now. So we face the same problems in Myanmar. Yeah, I think that is my last slide. Thank you for your attention, and I hand over to John.
Thank you very much, Teacher Han. Again, I think if there's any questions in the chat window, it would be good to pick up on some of those now. I'm just having a look.
I can. We've got a few coming in. There's one addressed to you, John, about what you did on the Tide project, and has that been useful in the current context? I wonder if that could perhaps come in towards the end, because it's a more overarching. There's also a question about from Diana Laurelard has asked. Digital resources are provided to students to watch and read. Are any digital tools used that encourage active and social learning online?
Thank you. Yes, we can pick up on the Tide project at the end, and I can happily say a little bit more. And I've also seen that there's 1 or 2 colleagues online from that project who might also want to say something about that from the Open University who led on that project. In terms of the interaction online, one of the problems I think we've faced, for instance, in the Access Myanmar platform, which doesn't have any kind of discussion forums, is initially, because of the concerns about trust and security, there was difficulty in sort of bringing people from CDM background and from non-CDM background together into the same platform for any kind of discussions. As I think Teacher Han said, I think people have got a little bit more open to taking risks about running things on Zoom and more open platforms. The use of Facebook is also very widespread. And I don't know, Teacher Han or any of the Myanmar colleagues on this call who might want to comment, do you have examples of ways in which students have sort of interacted socially and used resources to support their learning online? I kind of can see a few people on this call who can comment more directly from their own experience, like Nin and Tihar and also Teacher Han. So if any of you would like to comment in relation to that question.
John, can you say that again? Sorry, I missed.
Well, let me make sure could you repeat the question, please, Linda? I want to make sure I'm relaying it on correctly.
Yeah, do you mean Linda's question? I mean,
Yes.
like, can you talk a little bit more about action students take to protect their security?
No, sorry, it was a question just a little bit before that. It's how are digital tools being used to encourage active and social learning rather than watching and reading, as it were, watching videos and reading. So is there engagement taking place student to student and student to teacher, for example, and how's that being managed?
We use a Telegram group, and also Yeah, Telegram group and also Quizy. This some of the teachers use Quizzes and some of the teachers use Quizy. And also, I forgot the name. They use these kinds of digital tools to make more interactive. But I don't found that the main tools or application we use currently are Telegram and also Facebook. These are the main things, main tools. Yeah.
One of the things that we have been doing through the training is to encourage use of tools that can be promoting sort of more interaction. On the training sessions themselves, we have a lot of breakout sessions and sort of practice of the use of the tools. In practice, I'm not sure how much the teachers themselves have been able to use them with their students. I think that I might have a colleague, Tiha, online. If you're there, Tiha, would you like to comment briefly?
Yes, thank you, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Tia. So to comment on that, I think what I will say is that a lot of those students and teachers mainly use social media platforms, but in a way that it protects their identity and security. So they tend to shift one platform to another as well, from Telegram channels to Signal, Facebook groups as well. So mainly to make it interactive, but also protect their identity from persecution step. Yes. With that, add a little bit of context to that. Thank you.
Thanks, John and team. I think we've explored this. Diana's added a comment, a question, which I think might be something you want to follow up with, John. It's an offer for students or teachers to join the UCL online asynchronous course, which I think sounds very exciting. So thanks, Diana. I hope we can kind of bridge this conversation outside of the webinar, if that's okay. We did have a couple of other small questions, but I think we can pick those up at the end, because I think we're keen to hear from Matt and our other speakers.
Okay, I think if it's okay, I'm going to invite Frankie to speak next. Matt is now on the way. Apparently the link ended up in his junk folder, so he's on the way. But if I just invite Frankie to, where are we? So I've lost track of the right slide. Yeah, if I can invite Frankie to speak now, and then we'll go back to Matt when we've got him.
So much, John. And thanks, Teacher Han. I have to say, both the presentations so far have been really fascinating for me, having little familiarity with the context inside Myanmar. It's really inspiring to hear about the work that is ongoing there. So for my remarks, I'll just give a few thoughts overall on the work that UNHCR is doing in this area, the kind of partnerships that we have, and what we're seeing in terms of the challenges, the approaches which may have some success, and then finish with a couple of questions that are kind of challenging us at the moment, that it would be interesting to hear the reflections of this group on. But just to put you in the picture, first of all, in terms of UNHCR, obviously we're not an education provider. And so the question would be, why has UNHCR invested and valued higher education for so long? Whereas it's fair to say other humanitarian agencies haven't. And indeed, we have this target of 15 by 30, which is 15% of refugees into higher education by the year 2030. And I think the answer to that question is higher education for refugees unlocks so many further opportunities, what we call durable solutions. Through higher education, refugees can access pathways to third countries through education or work. Also, we see the higher the level of education that refugees have while they're in exile leads to more successful returns. And we've also seen really great examples of how refugees have been integrated into the communities in which they're hosted through higher education projects, really inspiring examples of community building projects. And so when it comes to this question of why higher education for refugees, for us, the answer is clear. And this is why for over 30 years, UNHCR has been running a scholarship program for refugees. It operates in over 50 countries. It's by far our most well-known and longest-standing work in education. And then I guess the follow-up question to that would be, well, why digital? What we in UNHCR refer to as connected. Why digital or online? And I think here we have to look at especially the recent trends in displacement. There's been a huge increase in numbers of forcibly displaced, particularly over the last decade and a half. The numbers have more than doubled. And at the same time, I just saw that question come in. Sorry, what does UNHCR stand for? I should have started with that. UNHCR is the United Nations Refugee Agency. So it's the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Thank you for asking. The majority of refugees are hosted in low and middle income countries, neighboring the countries they have fled. And so if we're thinking about this from the perspective of the University of London, or I heard on the call colleagues from the Open University, we have to think about, if we're going to support refugees, do we just support them on campus in London, in the UK, or do we think about how we can provide support in the countries which host the majority of refugees, which are often, as I said, low and middle income countries, and often struggling with development challenges, particularly around higher education themselves. And we've seen, as many on the call will know, the higher education these days, and particularly over the last 10 years or so, with the rise of transnational education, is really becoming far more based in partnerships and international approaches. And we, again, thinking about this from the perspective of UK universities, I can't remember the exact figure, but it may be 600,000 or 700,000 students enrolled in UK higher education courses from outside the UK. So when we think about this huge commercial operation, the question we ask as UNHCR is, well, how does refugee enrollment figure into those calculations? Because it is a question that we often receive from universities when we approach them with 15 by 30, with our request to enroll more refugees in major refugee hosting countries. I don't want to sound blunt, but to paraphrase the response, it would be, well, why would we do this work in Niger when we can do it in the UK? And for us, the answer is clear, and the responsibilities are clear. So this is why UNHCR has valued higher education for such a long time. It's why connected or digital forms such a critical part of that. And then, I guess the question is, what does it look like? So as UNHCR, we partner with universities. And I think this is one of the considerations to keep in mind. And this is talking about refugee populations. And I should clarify as well, most often when we work in higher education for refugees, we're talking about long-term protracted displacements, where refugees have been in exile often for the entire life cycle of their education, 10, 15 years or more. countries like Kenya, Uganda, where you have huge refugee settlements and camps. These are often the types of situation where our higher education partnerships come into play. And so we work with universities on this, and I think this for us is, one critical point I would raise is that there's a real need for universities and humanitarian actors to collaborate more closely. When we speak to universities about this work, I think they often feel quite daunted at the scale of the challenge. Like if one were to deliver higher education in a refugee camp, it raises all kinds of logistical, ethical, financial challenges, right? As well as, like the many opportunities. But I think the challenges are the first things that come to mind. And working with UNHCR or other humanitarian agencies can really help, firstly, share the load. So UNHCR often runs connected learning centers in refugee settlements. There are students often logging in regularly in centers set up with facilitation where they can access online resources. So there is often the infrastructure in place. There's often solar power. There's often these kind of offline first capabilities, or Starlink, which was mentioned, or other kinds of internet connectivity are in play. So it's not something whereby we're asking the university to take on all of the responsibilities from A to Z, but rather it's something where we can see if we can align our interests. But there are, as I mentioned, there are many, many challenges to this work, to the partnerships between humanitarian actors and universities to provide higher education for refugees. I've mentioned infrastructure. Funding is a very obvious one. But then there are key stumbling blocks we also see are around universities' institutional bureaucracy. Much of this work is done in partnership between universities, so between universities in the refugee hosting countries and those in the OECD countries. But it can be very, very challenging for alignment between the university systems to make this work smooth. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons there over the years. It can be very challenging to scale. I think something we've learned is really how to design to include refugees and communities in the design process, to make the learning experience valuable for them and to bring outcomes from the learning that have value for them. But in doing so, it means building in a lot of support structures that can make scale difficult. And we have, this huge target that we're trying to meet as UNHCR of 15% of refugees into higher education by 2030, that demands from us scale. And this is one of the challenges I will ask at the end. How do we manage that trade-off? Yeah, and I'll just mention one more challenge that often comes with delivery of connected or digital higher education in a refugee community, and that's accreditation. When it comes to cross-border higher education delivery, we find students who get immensely frustrated if the accreditation they receive is not recognized by the national authorities in their country, or by the employers where they're residing. So this is something we really ask or try to encourage universities to take into consideration. But all of these challenges require a lot of thought, a lot of intentionality, a lot of planning. And I guess the good news is that it's all been done before. So UNHCR collaborates with a group of over 40 universities who've been doing this work for 15, 20 years or more. And through that time have built up quite a strong body of knowledge on how to deliver digital or connected higher education in refugee hosting communities. We have ways of sharing that knowledge as well. We're currently delivering an online course on how to do this work that's been very successful. We've got over 800 people on that course. There's been a lot of interest in it. So we're really trying to build on that. And then, sorry, John, how am I doing for time? Should I wrap up or have I got another couple of minutes?
If you wouldn't mind wrapping up, probably, because we've got Matt with us now.
Sure.
We might hopefully have a few minutes left for questions at the end, if you don't mind. But thank you so much. Is that okay, Linda? Is it okay with you, Linda, if we go straight to Matt then, and then questions after that? I'll go quick back through your slides. Sorry you had issues connecting, Matt, but great that you've been able to join us. And sorry, it's going to be a little bit condensed now. We've probably got 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Apologies for being so late. I can hear Frankie asking some really good questions, so I'll be brief to give you time to discuss some of them, I hope. My name is Matt Foster. I am the Chief Executive at CARA, the Council for At-Risk Academics. We're an organisation that's nearly 100 years old, providing a lifeline for academics at risk. I'll briefly talk about the work that we do and then perhaps go to some thoughts on how we can use open distance learning to a greater extent in our work. So let's go to the next slide, John, if that's okay. So we use 3 sources of data to look at the problem we're trying to address. Education Under Attack is an annual review of the number of direct attacks on educators and educational institutions, which is showing a dramatic increase over the last few years, increased of 20%, as we're seeing education being directly targeted in conflicts. We look at the Free to Think annual monitoring report, which looks perhaps more broadly at examples of persecution against academics, and which again is showing worrying trends. And we look at the Academic Freedom Index, which looks at a country level on the levels of academic freedom in any particular country. And again, it's showing it's moving in the wrong direction. So it's very hard to estimate how many academics are currently considered to be at risk, but I would guess it would be, many 100,000. And it's a problem, it's an issue that's growing by the day, and it's become part of the public discourse now. When we think about academic freedom in the US, and we're starting to receive applications for our work from colleagues in America at the moment. So this is a huge challenge. It's a growing challenge. CARA attempts to contribute to this challenge by doing 2 things in particular. One is by providing sanctuary to academics at risk in the UK. We work with 135 UK universities, and we organise for them to be hosted at one of those UK universities. We've got about 150 academics at the moment in the UK. But obviously, because the scale of this challenge is so big, we also run what we call regional programs, where we support academics work based in refugee hosting countries, and we bring academics from the UK closer to them to support them through collaborative research projects and partnerships. So maybe we'll go to the next slide. I'll whiz through these. Perhaps the next one will be really quick. This is just suggesting, well, there are a number of organizations like CARA around the world. There's a couple in the US, there's a growing number in Europe. There's a new EU focus one that's not on the slide here. There's 5 or 6 CARA-like organizations around the world. And I won't let you read the numbers here because there's not really time, but in summary, these organizations together, we provide only a couple of thousand fellowships a year for academics at risk, which is a tiny drop in the ocean when compared to the overall context that we just looked at. If we go to the next slide, maybe the next one, John, if that's okay. Yeah, we've been running regional programs for the last 10 years, Iraq, Zimbabwe, and currently Syria, although that's moving to an end now. And we're starting to look at the recovery phase in Syria as sanctions are lifted. And basically, we're creating opportunities to work with many academics who are either in their own country or who are moved to neighbouring countries and are hosted there to continue their academic journey, mainly through collaborative research work, and working with a number of UK universities to do this. I can't say that open distance learning has been a particular feature of these partnerships. I think that will be something we look at moving forward, but certainly distance education has. And you might see in the middle example in Zimbabwe, we helped establish a virtual lecture hall that allowed academics who'd left the country to continue to teach within the country and to continue to work with their colleagues in Zimbabwe from the UK and South Africa. Maybe next slide, John. I'm conscious of time. That there's a picture of the virtual lecture hall in Zimbabwe that's still functioning to this day, established through a partnership with Econet, which is a telecommunications company. And we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, and really thoughts around this question of open distance learning and how can we do more with it. We have an alumni group over of a few thousand CARA fellows now, and I think this alumni group could increasingly be part of an ODL infrastructure to provide the support for online learning. And so that's really an open invitation to collaborate, I think, because we would like to find ways to connect our alumni groups to online learning opportunities. We think we can do more to support early career researchers in refugee hosting countries. We look at the number of refugees or academics that are currently located in Egypt, for example, from Sudan or from Palestine. There's a huge opportunity there to not just think about the UK, bringing people here to do PhDs, but also to think about what opportunities could we create for early career researchers in countries like Egypt. Language training is a theme that runs throughout, not only for academics themselves, but also from their families, bearing in mind the changing immigration policies in the UK, which now require for student visa at least adult dependents to have certain level of language proficiency. And I think overall, this idea of universities and university partnerships being a driver for development is a very interesting one that's been talked about for a long time. But certainly with the cuts in ODA, I think there are big role for universities now. And I think there's some interesting examples of where universities have been really proactive in doing what Frankie said and collaborating with NGO groups and being a driver of development, in particular protracted crisis situations. Although we have to say, I skipped the slide earlier, I think there's more to be done to stimulate universities to think about the range of protracted crises in the world at the moment, and to think about what a proportionate response would be in each of them, building on perhaps their own historic ties and areas of academic interest. So John, sorry that was so fast, but hopefully leaves some time for questions.
Thank you, Matt. We've got limited time, but I'll hand back to Linda to refer to the chat window and navigate us through the rest of the session.
Thanks, John. Well, absolutely inspiring, daunting, challenging, and I think a real push for an organisation like the University of London, which actually works with students in 190 countries, and so our students are constantly encountering complex circumstances, and we make a lot of adjustments and so on. But I think there's always opportunities to think more and work more in there very soon. So we've got in the chat some really useful resources and supports. But if people would like to add some more questions into the chat, they'd be very welcome to. I think that we had some questions that were addressed towards Teacher Han, and some comments there about student dropout and issues around supporting students to come back to study if they can, and I think Teacher Han has responded to those largely, I think. So we don't have any particular comments in the chat at the moment, but I'd be happy to sort of ask the panel a question, which is if you were to suggest a priority area for our universities to work in, not particularly a region, but a priority approach that we might take, what would it be? John?
Well, I think for me, that what's emerged as the sort of priority that's realistic in terms of the work we can do in Myanmar, and I don't know if this applies to other regions as well, is to try our best to support the educators and help them to develop their skills. And if possible, if they belong to an institution with which we can partner, then the capacity development side of it also can sort of have greater impact as well. I know in the context of the Centre of Online Distance Education, we have been working in different countries, and but perhaps within countries where there's a more formal way of kind of interacting with a university system rather than part of a resistance. But it would be interesting to explore, and I think that there are opportunities there, and some quite significant organisations like SNU that are working to develop the skills of educators. So I think that would be my response, but be interested to hear from the other panel members on their priorities.
Matt, Frankie, Han, Teacher Han?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think that for Myanmar case, we have different stories, different contexts. We need to approach, need to use different approach. For Myanmar context, we found that some institutions approach to us, they like to use the way they use in Ukraine, something like that. But the context is different. That's why I think I learned that the most suitable approach for us is like kind of localization. You need to we have a kind of different international experts in different contexts, but the main thing is contexts are different. So for Myanmar, we are very diverse, not only in Myanmar, but also in the highland, but also in the ethnic control area. So we have different languages, different cultural backgrounds, and different thinking about federalism. So now in political context, we are making like, what is federalism? Well, how do we understand federalism? We have different consideration. So and we are also heading towards a federal education system. There are few words like federalism, conflict resolution, conflict management, inclusive education, multicultural education. These are the concepts that is very new for us. Before the coup, we as an educator, myself, we never learn about it. We use reference from US reference book, but we skip that chapter because we don't think it is suitable for us. But now we face it. So that's why we are now accommodating ourselves. So that's why I think we need to localize the terms. We need our local teachers to strengthen and to empower them to feed the ownership and to make sense to them, to make the real change happen in their context. Thank you.
Thank you. Really, really profound words there. Thank you, and I really appreciated your honesty, Teacher Han, in describing the experiences that you're having. I'm afraid we're sort of running out of time, but I wondered, Matt or Frankie, whether you just had a very short response to my question about, what should a university like the University of London be focusing on to support in this area?
Yeah, I think my answer is very similar to John's. Institutional links. We see a lot of academics individually getting involved, but I think for longevity and really long-term commitment in protracted crisis, it'd be great to seeing universities partnering with their counterparts over the long term.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you very much. Frankie, would you like to just have the last moment, if that's okay?
Very briefly, I'd say getting students outcomes that they value, which most of the time is a job. I think it's not enough to just deliver the education, hand out the certificate, I think it has to lead to a transformative change for the refugees in the program.
Thank you. Very, very interesting, profound and challenging ideas at the end there. Thank you very much. And thanks, John, for putting this event together. Thanks also to colleagues who supported the webinar and the registration process. It's been a pleasure to hear from you, and there's been a lot of really useful engagement in the chat, so we'll make sure that we follow up on that. Thank you very much.